Hello and welcome to this short presentation around green fleet transition. My name is Tony Murtagh. I'm a director of Egnidar Group, which includes Logical Vehicle Management and Carly's Supermarket. I spent 30 years in the fleet and mobility industry, which includes the last 10 years helping businesses move into the low carbon economy through the transition to green fleets. Changing your fleet vehicles to plug-in models, however many you have, is possible right now. It's true that certain vehicles may need to remain as diesel or petrol because of their use, but for most companies, most of the time, moving to plug-in vehicles, be that plug-in hybrids or fully electric, is possible. And what's more, it's possible at no extra cost. We know this because we already have clients in these programs. And this is possible because of our special insights and experiences. And therefore, my message is that you can move to low carbon and you can do it without costing the earth. Yes, that pun was intended. And at the very end of this short presentation, I'll also outline another business reason to consider this move that relates to the reporting of greenhouse gases. So today that area is known as SECR, or Streamlined Energy and Carbon Reporting. And there's an increasing chance that your organisation will fall into the net for those purposes, and company and grey fleet vehicles and their emissions are a key part of those reporting requirements. So why does moving to a green fleet matter? In other words, why even bother? Well, there are three important reasons. Firstly, legislation is changing, and it's changing rapidly, although it's not always that noticeable. Those responsible for fleets generally have other tasks too, and it's impossible to stay on top of everything that you may need to know. The fact is that the UK government has committed to net zero carbon outputs by 2050. Now, one policy that is linked to this commitment is the introduction of clean air zones in 5 cities and 23 local authorities over the 12-month period to 2021. So non-compliant vehicles will face charges, and that means many of our internal combustion engine fleets will come with increased costs when this happens. Another factor is the social and community impacts that are affecting our local air quality in our own communities. Now, as all of our company cars and vans set off each morning, they're pumping out carbon and particulates outside our homes, outside our schools, and our public places. And this is where we can have most impact on our own environments by switching to low or zero carbon vehicles. And finally, the commercial benefits are raising up the boardroom agenda. The latest updates on carbon reporting requirements means the net is widening and catching companies of all sizes, not just large PLCs. So it could easily be anybody on this call that has a requirement to report greenhouse gas emissions through the streamlined energy and carbon reporting rules. So low carbon vehicles will be critical to this. And you know, supply chains will be mandated to report on carbon emissions, so tenders will include mandatory criteria for this, which will have a negative effect on revenues for those organisations that don't tackle this issue. So in other words, poor emission levels and a lack of plans to reduce these will impact on sales performance. What are the cost implications? So the next slide that we see will be a graph that is taken from the last client project that we were involved in, and it's produced from real data of a specific client with 50 cars and vans. Now, when we started working with this client, they had more than 80% diesel engines on their fleet when our work started. So to demonstrate the difference in all costs between the existing petrol and diesel fleet versus plug-in vehicle models, we need to consider lease costs, disallowable VAT, Class 1 national insurance, and fuel costs in line with a specific company policy. So now let's consider the modelling of a transition to a greener fleet. Ignidar and Logical helps clients move to low carbon vehicles with our three-step program. The starting point here, represented by the left-hand part of this graph, is to baseline the cost, looking at the four component elements. That's lease costs, SMR, which is service, maintenance and repair, fuel, and then taxation. Step one in this program is to make cost savings on the existing baseline. So that's taking the same vehicles and looking for cost savings. And typically, any fleet can save 10% by looking and going to the market for the best lease deal on every vehicle, and then considering a pay-as-you-go for service, maintenance and repair. Logical can advise further on how to achieve this if that's of interest. Step two is to construct the same cost components but for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, PHEVs. Now we can see the changes in profiles here in the third bar of this graph. In summary, lease costs increase, SMR is broadly the same as an internal combustion engine, as is the fuel. However, taxation reduces significantly, broadly speaking, by around about half. Now, we think the most interesting step here is step three. Because we see the components of electric vehicles, which cost more to lease, around about the same for SMR, but we see a significant reduction in fuel costs. And we also see for this financial year, that's 2020 to 2021, we see no taxation, that's zero NIC contributions. Now, we do see an increase in NIC, however, it's only an average of 1% over 3 years, so this would still be minimal costs over a 3-year period. So steps 2 and 3 are still based on the lowest price lease deals and may not be reflected by working with a single leasing provider. Something else to consider here is the driver benefit. So the average company car driver is paying anywhere from £250 to even £350 per month, possibly higher actually, which isn't a consideration here. However, from April 2020, those drivers of electric vehicles, pure electric vehicles, are paying zero benefit in kind tax for 12 months. Now that's an average saving of anywhere from £3,000 to almost £4,500 per annum. Or to put that another way, that could pay for a family holiday for most people, which is a significant benefit. A simple view of the transition shows that saving money on your existing fleet will make no difference to emission levels. However, moving to plug-in hybrid vehicles will save money and reduce emissions by around a third. Moving to pure electric vehicles will save even more money. In whole life cost terms, that's all costs considered, and reduce emissions to zero. And again, please remember that these numbers are modelled based on the lowest priced lease deals. Once the numbers are crunched, the requirements for moving the fleet to low carbon plug-in vehicles are as follows. Firstly, we need to consider fleet policy changes. That could be a simple amendment, or it could be a rewriting of policy in consideration for the move to low carbon vehicles. This work will usually include the change to vehicle choice lists or bandings. Then we need to look at the charging infrastructure, whether that's for a driver's own premises or indeed at operational sites too. And then we should look at the driver support program. And this could mean the general behaviour change of driving a plug-in vehicle, which is quite different from an internal combustion engine of a petrol or diesel and requires a little more planning. Specific to this part of the program is drivers of PHEVs, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, to ensure that the charging is optimized for these vehicles so that the MPG is as good as it can be. Some early iteration of these programs learned from these situations where drivers were enjoying lower benefit in kind, but the company was paying increased cost in fuel because these vehicles were not being charged. Then we need to discuss carbon protocols and energy contracts with businesses to ensure that we're optimizing energy tariffs, which is an important contribution to the streamlined energy and carbon reporting, the SECR. Now, this is important because investors or shareholders and other stakeholders across organizations are increasingly requesting better environmental disclosures through their annual reports and accounts. That concludes my short presentation. If any of the themes on here have been interesting or you would like more help or clarification, then you can contact me at tony@egnidar.co.uk, or you can call me on 07785 112 197. Thank you.